You're listening to Brave Girls with Tracy M., where we choose to empower you to be a better leader, mentor, and coach in the world. We'll share stories of people who have achieved great heights by overcoming adversity and rising to the challenge, all while pursuing their passions. These courageous people will inspire you to have faith in yourself and take bold action. Right here with the host of Brave Girls, Tracy M.
Episode 50, Tell More Stories with Amanda Berlin. Meet fellow podcaster and PR gal from Jersey, Amanda Berlin, and hear why she thinks we all need to tell more stories. She's a brilliant and masterful communicator who coaches entrepreneurs on how to get visibility for their businesses and brands. Her podcast, Empowered Publicity, has been out there for 3 years, and it's absolutely one of my favorites, and I know you'll want to check it out. Trained as a copywriter in the PR agency world, Amanda talks about the power of storytelling and how podcasting is an intimate medium that connects you to your audience. She shares her insights on publicity tactics and how she's so passionate about teaching entrepreneurs how to do the PR themselves. She tells her brave girl story of how she got to where she is today. She studied journalism at the George Washington University, interned at CNN, wrote for a local paper, and came back to New York City. For a decade, she wrote media pitches for Disney, Dove, Brawny, Baskin Robbins, Colgate, and Campbell's. Her celebrity publicity days included promoting prominent people like Joan and Melissa Rivers, Cooper, and even Paul McCartney. Amanda believes that we all have something important to say, and it's our responsibility to raise our voices and be heard. She says there are people out there who need us, and it's up to us to make sure they can find us. Amanda shares her experiences about making investments to work with coaches, mentors, and guides, and how that shaped who she is today and virtually catapulted her growth. We talk about mindset, affirmations, and self-talk, and how early on she learned from Gabby Bernstein and her spiritual teachings around A Course in Miracles. She shares her story of making the decision to divorce and the bravery she needed to exhibit for her child as she stepped into who she truly is. We talk about the importance of committing to yourself, doing the inner work, and making the changes necessary to become the best version of yourself. I was so happy to meet Amanda in real life this past spring when I had a meeting in New York City. She's real, authentic, smart, and I'm just so glad that I now call her my friend and a trusted resource. I know why you will see why I believe Amanda is a true brave girl that is using her gifts for good in the world. So let's go and meet Amanda Berlin. So welcome to Brave Girls with Tracy M. Tonight, I'm so excited because I get to interview Amanda Berlin, who is the host of the Empowered Publicity podcast. And I was a fangirl of Amanda's for quite some time before I realized that we had mutual connections. So welcome to the show, Amanda.
Tracy, thank you so much for having me. And I'm blushing over here a little bit to know that you are a fan. That's such a, yeah, that's a word.
It's true. Well, I'm a PR girl and I love podcasts, and I don't even know how I found you. It was just, I stumbled upon your podcast and I was like, wow, maybe I can get some tips from Amanda in my day job doing PR for the Maryland Insurance Administration. And because I was really struggling with, what are some ideas? And what I love about your show is A, it's really, really good. B, I just felt like a true connection with you, like right away with your recommendations and the way that you do your on-air coaching and are able to really come up with some solid ideas for public. So tell me a little bit about what made you decide that you wanted to do a podcast specifically about public relations.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that reflection on the content. Yeah, I have had my business in which I primarily coach entrepreneurs on how to get publicity for their businesses and how to talk about what they do in a compelling manner. So communications and visibility coaching for entrepreneurs, because I also had been in the PR world for 12 plus years. And I we all know if we're in the entrepreneurial space, especially if we're operating online, that you have to create content. You have to create content on an ongoing basis. And the only way that I could imagine, or that I really could wrap my arms around creating content on an ongoing basis, was by doing the podcast. And right now I'm up to 186 episodes this week. And so that's, over 3 years, I guess, of podcasting, which has far surpassed my commitment to like blogging or operating any other consistent form of content. So it really was out of necessity and out of the process of finding a medium that worked for me. I can talk through something so much more easily than I could write about it. It's less onerous, despite the fact that I spent a large part of my corporate career as a PR writer. So it's a little bit of a disconnect, but maybe I just burnt out on writing. I don't know.
Yeah, well, and I kind of feel the same way. Like I started mine, I had these high hopes of being this blogger, social media influencer, and I just couldn't get myself to create the content. And I love talking to people. I love hearing their stories. And so I felt like, wow, I love listening to podcasts. I could have conversations with really interesting people. And I can also do solo episodes, but I kind of fell into the same thing as you probably end up spending just as much time creating a podcast episode as it would take you to write and edit and scrub and get it polished so that you feel good about putting it out there. But there's just something about the human connection and the voice and, the conversations and what you get out of the conversations.
Absolutely. And when you do a podcast, well, first of all, audio is an incredibly intimate medium, so it lets you establish that connection with your audience that much more quickly. As anyone listening will attest, I'm sure that they feel very close to you, Tracy, and they trust your insight and the people that you're bringing to them. And the other piece of it too is if you combine interviews, if you integrate interviews into the structure of your podcast, then you're also leveraging the audiences of the people that you're interviewing as well.
Yes, I've definitely seen that. I've seen spikes in my metrics, my downloads, and the reach of my downloads based on who was interviewed and the strength of their network and their community, and other folks who maybe aren't as big online with a presence or maybe aren't well known in their area. So it definitely feels like a ripple in the pond. Mm-hmm. And what I like now is that I'm actually starting to interview not the people that I know and not the people they know, but the people they know who are like that many degrees away. And these people are crazy amazing, have done crazy amazing things, and they also have a reach that is different than all of us combined. So that's been really kind of fun to watch. Have you seen that with your show? Or
yeah, absolutely. I think that I think that your points about aligning with people who have a particular reach or are connected with a particular audience, that those are all good points, that they do influence listenership. The interesting thing that I think my podcast has done for me, and you're probably noticing this too, is that it's given me a reason to reach out to people who I wouldn't have any, it gives me a reason to reach out. I have something to offer. I have an opportunity for them. And so I feel even more comfortable reaching out to people who may seem, a little bit out of reach, or for against all my better judgment, I may have put on a pedestal. I have actually something that they might be interested in.
Right. So is one of the things I know on the Empowered Publicity podcast, you have all kinds of different entrepreneurs, because I haven't listened to all 186 episodes, but I'm pretty close. You're like my drive into work and my drive out of work. I'm like, what does Amanda have to say about this today?
Wow. Thank you so much. That's such an honor.
Yeah. But I mean, do you pitch your clients to get on other podcasts too, as like a way for them to get known for what they do?
Yes, absolutely. Well, so the way that I work is a little bit different. I'm not a traditional publicist in that I am sort of bucking the industry and teaching my clients how to do this work themselves.
Right.
So I'm a bit of an outlier, and I believe that, I think it's cost prohibitive for entrepreneurs in most stages of their business to hire a publicist or retain a PR firm. So they need to know how to do this themselves. And so when I work with a client, we figure out what's going to be the best medium for them to present themselves on and be visible through, what's going to help them reach the right audience. And sometimes that's podcasts. I think podcasts are extremely powerful, especially for reaching deep into that niche that contains your ideal client. But there are all different kinds of mediums that can be valuable to a business owner.
Yeah. And one of the things I like about your show is that you have these solo episodes where you talk about how to pitch yourself to the local TV station, how to get on air with like the radio stations. And so I like that you are the DIY teacher, especially for entrepreneurs. And if they're smart, they would start listening and do a lot of the things that you recommend, so that they can actually do it as they're scaling, right?
Right.
I agree with you. It's the larger entrepreneurs maybe that have a huge operation that is going to have the budget to bring somebody in. Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit about your backstory.
Sure. So, like I said, I had started in publicity right out of college. I told you I had gone to the George Washington University in Washington, D.C., a stone's throw from where you're located, about an hour south, or 45 minutes, depending on traffic, probably, or more. I don't know.
Or 2 hours.
Right?
Sometimes 3.
So I studied journalism in college, and I wanted to go into television. I really had my heart set on going into television, and I had some connections in the industry in New York, and I ended up working at this firm that specialized in celebrity publicity. And we had contracts with all of the networks at the time to get them to get their projects out there on television, to book interviews for the talent who were doing special projects with each of the networks. So I worked with people like Sally Field, like Holly Hunter, Joan and Melissa Rivers, Anderson Cooper. The biggest celebrity that I worked with was Paul McCartney. But they all at some time or another were working on a project with like ABC, NBC, CBS, Lifetime. Those were the networks that we were working with, and we were doing all of their press junkets essentially. And it was super fun because, it was the high profile talent, and it was, some of them were easier to pitch to the media than others. So, some were more interesting, but that was really where I cut my teeth on electronic publicity, as it was called at the time. This was before, social media was a thing at all. I think it was before Mark Zuckerberg was probably even in college. So, nothing like that existed at the time. And I moved through the industry into more traditional PR roles. So I became I actually specialized in electronic publicity at a big firm called Edelman, and I went over to another small firm where I worked my way up in the same realm, electronic publicity, booking our clients' talent on television and radio, I worked my way up to be editorial director at this small firm. And really what I was responsible for, our clients were no longer, the networks. They were consumer products companies and pharmaceutical companies and entertainment companies and nonprofits and financial firms and all of the more traditional businesses. So the talent became more challenging to book. And what my function was to take my client's message, what they came to us with, whether it was like an FDA approval and medical jargon that came through in a study, or notes about how nutritious their boxed frozen meal was, or whatever it may be, and pair that with the talent that they or we had selected for them. So like, why is this person interesting and what do they have to lend to the message here? And create a story that would be interesting or palatable at all to the media. And that became my genius, because I spent so many hours, like Malcolm Gladwell talks about the 10,000 hours. I did the math at one point. It was, 6 years of, of this work, of doing this work day in and day out, of creating stories for these clients that really honed my skill. And, as I was in that work, I felt like, my soul was really not being nourished, and by contrast, really, felt like it was dying. So I knew that I wanted to do something that was more, like quote unquote, making the world a better place, but I didn't know what that looked like. And I wasn't prepared to just jump ship and figure it out. So, and I think this is where the message of like bravery kind of comes in a little bit, because I really had to be kicked. I had to be like punted out of the cubicle and really like had a trial by fire in terms of, putting my stake in the ground and saying, I'm not going to go and find another job just like the one that I hated. So I really sort of, I got laid off from that job because the company eventually went out of business. And that was my decision, was I wasn't going to go and find another job just like this one where I felt like my soul was dying. So when you take a cross section of my life at the time, I was working, yes, in New York City. I had an apartment that I owned. I was married. I was the breadwinner. And in a year, I would also be pregnant with my daughter, my only child. So I was, there was a lot of pressure on me, and I still wasn't willing to give up the ghost and go and find a regular job. I was determined to make this work. And it took me about a year, from 2012 to 2013. My daughter was born in 2013. It took me that year to figure out what my business was going to be. And the realization was that I could be having a positive impact on the world, as I said that I wanted to, doing the work that was in my genius zone, if I was doing it for people who I really believed in. And so that was how I found my footing, by offering this sort of, demystifying the media, demystifying visibility for entrepreneurs who I believe are out there doing their soul's work and supporting their families and having a positive impact, even if it's in their own little sphere.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah, because I think telling stories that's a gift. To take corporate gobbledygook like FDA regulations. I mean, sometimes my mom's like, I don't even know what you do. And I'm like, I write corporate gobbledygook. I would be on the company side writing the gobbledygook, or trying to figure out why does anybody need to care? Employees and media and elected officials, and turning it into a story. And I think at some point when you realize your soul is dying and you've mastered your craft, I give you a lot of credit being in the situation where you had so much pressure on your shoulders, that that you were able to figure it out. And so I'm just curious, did you get like support or help from, like, were you a seeker and had like mentors and guides and angels that were coming into your life?
Yeah, absolutely. So my early mentors were all in the personal development space. And that was what I thought that I wanted to do when I left corporate. And so that year where I was sort of like sorting it out, I was like really indignant about corporate and communications and PR in general. I was like, there is no way I'm doing that again. I hate that. And, you know, like really not recognizing that it was a culture thing within the company that I worked for and less about the substance of the work.
Right.
But during that time, my mentors were a woman by the name of Patricia Moreno, who is a New York City fitness expert who founded a practice called Intensati, which really opened my mind to the fact that the way that you talk to yourself influences the way that you show up in your life, because the practice of Intensati included affirmations, which you say out loud while you're exercising. So it's like they really get into your soul and into your mind. So that was huge for me in terms of changing the way, or even just becoming aware of the way that I was talking to myself, the conversations I was having. And then the other really influential mentor was someone who's actually quite huge now, but this was really in the infancy of her practice, and that was Gabby Bernstein. She,
I know her.
Yeah. So when she was starting out, she had the first iteration of her coaching groups in her apartment. I was not in that iteration, but in the second iteration, she was in an ashram in the East Village in New York, and I was in her group when there were about 8 of us in the room together. And that was really powerful for me too, in terms of the philosophies she was teaching, and even just the community that she brought together of women who, you know, really were seekers and who wanted to feel better in their lives. And actually, many, I would say 3 of my still very close friends are from that period, and we're all connected through Gabby.
Yeah, I did her Spirit Junkie Masterclass.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I was a big fan of Marianne Williamson when she came out with all of her interpretations of A Course in Miracles. And then I met Gabby and I was like, oh, okay, she's just a younger version of Marianne. Yes. And a lot of her teachings resonate with me as well. And I think I love Intensati. That is amazing, because so much of what we say to ourselves can make or break you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you just get on that loop, right?
Absolutely.
And it's hard to get off the hamster wheel and the merry-go-round if you don't change the dialogue that you have with yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. Some of the mantras that have stuck with me from that are really like, what you think about, you bring about. So I think that's how I identify with that loop, is that, you know, when you are stuck on a thought, you really can't help but live in that reality. And then your circumstances come to reflect that reality.
Right. So fast forward, we're in 2019, and what does your life look like?
So, yeah. So actually I want to backtrack also to mention, because you asked about mentors. Making investments in my business has been absolutely massive in terms of growth, and really, like, the metaphor that comes to mind is a catapult, because I think that there's an energetic, like, in addition to just like making the investment and getting the expertise of a coach or consultant, there's like an energetic thing that happens when you invest in yourself and in your business, where the universe, for lack of a better word, kind of responds to your stake in the ground, your belief in yourself, you're putting your money where your mouth is. So my biggest catapult in, I'd say, the last 3 years has been working with a coach who has helped me on like a much more strategic level in my business. And she also helps on the personal side as it relates to business. So, which will also bring me to what to where I am today, which was when I first started working with her. I was in a moment where I was like, I like I'm not prepared to, sacrifice the work that I've done the last 4 years or whatever to build this business, but something has to change here. And there was a massive change going on in my life, which was that I was separating from my husband and ultimately getting divorced. So I knew I needed someone who would be like, get your head in the game. I can hold you through all of this, and we're gonna save what's happening here.
Yeah, she probably helped you get to the other side.
Yeah, exactly. So,
but when you're in it, it doesn't feel good.
No, but yeah, I mean, I'm so glad that we're here talking about bravery and, brave girls, because that was a huge decision that I had to make. And the deciding factor was really my child, because I wanted her to know me as someone who I was proud to be. And I wasn't proud of the person that I was in that relationship, because I wasn't happy, and I knew that it wasn't right. And I wasn't prepared to just, shine it on and live in that space for however long I could, just because I don't know why I would do that. So, so that, where I am today is, once that was a real turning point for me, making that decision to leave my marriage. And once I did, I felt, it sounds cliche and obvious now, but it was such a revelation because I labored over it for so long. I felt free, and I felt like I could finally step into what I'm supposed to be doing in my life and in my work. So my business grew, which was not surprising to me at all. I had this feeling that if I did this, it would be okay. Like it was going to catalyze positive change in my life. So my business grew. I feel like I'm a person.
Mm-hmm.
And my daughter is very young, so there's really, it didn't throw her into turmoil at all. I don't think she ever remembers when we lived together. And I don't mean to laugh about it, but it is sort of a blessing that she, that she's so young. So today I have, I think I looked at my roster. I have probably about 18 clients that I work with at, in different capacities,
Mm-hmm.
all in the realm of business strategy and communication strategy and visibility. And I am doing work that I really want to be doing. I went through a period in the very beginning where, I think many business owners will go through this period where you're maybe like teetering on the edge of like freelancer and business owner. You're
Mm-hmm.
doing a lot of work because that's what you know how to get paid to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I spent a lot of time doing that, and I'm not taking work that I don't want to do just because I need the money. I don't. I can afford now. I've built a system, and I've built a business that allows me to do the work that I want to be doing with clients.
That's really good. And they're probably people that you want to be doing business with.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, you probably
They
get so
inspire
excited.
me.
Yeah. I was going to say, and
Mm-hmm.
you're, as a public relations person, you're always kind of behind the scenes, but like you're like cheering them on because if they pull the right levers, how that can impact their business and their life.
Yeah, that's a great metaphor. Yeah.
I've always felt that way. I've always been like, keep me in the background, but like when everybody's like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever, I'm like, yeah, I had something to do with that.
Right.
But like, don't shine the light on me, shine the light on them. You know, a sign of a good PR person.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's about them. Yeah. So that's great. And, now you get to be a mom, and you're probably, a happy mom.
Yes, exactly. I am.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, I think that's great that you've been able to make a decision, take action, get the help that you need change your inner dialogue. Like you've done all the right things, to just kind of put you on this glide path outside of the soul sucking job,
Right. Right.
and, but you paid your dues, your 10,000 hours of, creating content, and I'm sure your clients love you.
Thank you. I hope so. And, I think that you point to something really important, and that is doing the work, like doing the inner work and the outer work that needs to be done in order to have the life that you want, whether you're in business or simply, want to feel better in your life.
Yeah.
It's like
I would
not being
agree.
afraid to do the hard work, not being afraid to look at what needs to be looked at and make change.
I would totally agree. And I've watched people as they have done the inner work and they've made these big investments in themselves to be able to show up as their best version of themselves. And whenever I ask them what they attribute to, they always say it's the personal growth and development work and the commitment they made to themselves. Mm-hmm. And doing things that made them feel uncomfortable. So I'm sure you find that every day.
For sure.
As an entrepreneur. So how do you get comfortable being uncomfortable?
That's a really good question. I don't know that, I think that there's like a scale to discomfort. So you push up against the edge of it every time you're testing yourself or pushing yourself to go further. Mm-hmm. And then what was uncomfortable becomes more comfortable. And then there's a new discomfort. So I think that's sort of how I've navigated it, is that I've done the thing that makes me uncomfortable until it becomes less uncomfortable.
Yeah. Well, and they say new level, new devil, right?
Oh, I never heard that.
Have you never heard that? Yeah. So it's like, okay, this is going to be uncomfortable. And then you get comfortable and you pass through. David Nagel calls it the terror barrier, and you kind of bust through that. And then, you're going to face another terror barrier when you get to the next level. Mm-hmm. It's going to be something different, but your fears, your doubts, your worries, like all that stuff is going to be running through your mind, and you got to do it anyway.
Right.
But I think sometimes, like you were saying, like energetically, I liked what you said about this energetic response from like the universe, because it's not just the money. It's like you're making it, like you said, you're putting a stake in the ground.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which can be scary.
Absolutely. Sometimes I even tell my clients that when I was making my first big investment in my business, I was like sweating when I was handing over my credit card number. It's very scary. But on some level, you listen to your gut. And I mean, I knew that that's what I needed to do. Otherwise, I was just going to stay in the same place, which was not where I wanted to be. And and I firmly believe that if you want someone to invest in you, you have to invest in yourself.
Yes.
Meaning, if you want someone to pay you, if you want a client,
yes,
then you need to be, investing in yourself and being a client.
No, I agree. I totally agree. So, so my finale question is always, what's the bravest thing that you've ever done, and how does it inspire you today? And you've talked about a lot of brave things that you've done, but if you were to really look back over everything, is there one particular moment where you really had to muster up courage like nobody's business? So what was that moment?
I will say, I remember telling my ex, with whom I have a very amicable relationship, so that may point to why it was so difficult to say we need to separate. I remember the moment that I had to say that, and it was very challenging. But I've kind of already talked about that, so I want to point to a different
Please do.
moment.
Please do.
So when I was 19 in 1999, so that tells you exactly how old I am, I I studied abroad in Madrid, Spain. And like I said, I went to GW, and there was a small program that was run through GW. And I was like, that's what I'm doing. And for some reason, I have no idea why I wanted to go to Spain. I wasn't a Spanish major. I didn't even minor in Spanish. I didn't even take a single Spanish class in college. I took Spanish in high school, so I, maybe had a little bit of a background. But for whatever reason, I was like, I'm going to Spain. And, it was maybe brave, but it was also sort of like this single-minded tunnel vision. I just didn't even look into anything else. And I got on the plane, and my dad says that he was just amazed because I just turned back and waved and left. And I had in my head that and this points to that, how you live with the discomfort. I looked at things in my life to date, as a 19-year-old that I had done that felt brave. I underwent a surgery that was really important to me. I had gone to sleepaway camp for my entire childhood. And, so I had been away from family before, and I was like, I can do hard things. I've done these things. I had no clue what I was getting myself into because I did not speak Spanish. I was going and living and I was super anxious once I realized what I was in for. When the plane touched down, I was like, oh my God. I was going to live with a family. So I wasn't even living in a dorm with other English speaking Americans. I was living with a Spanish family. And it was so hard the entire time that I was there because it never became home to me. My Spanish got good, but I was never fluent. I was thinking the whole time, translating everything. And I just remember the whole time being like, I feel like I'm doing something hard right now. And in retrospect, that was really brave of me to do as a cloistered Northeastern Jewish girl from the suburbs to go to Spain with a couple of friends who lived in a different house on the other side of the city and live with a family and get by for 6 months. It was really, it was probably my soul saying you can do whatever. I think I'm an old soul. And so I was probably drawn there for some reason. Actually, in retrospect, I started reading this book to my daughter that my dad used to read to me called There Was Nobody There. And there's a whole little line in that story about Spain. And I was like, that's probably why I ended up going to Spain.
It was probably in your subconscious.
Exactly. But I love Spain. I love to travel. I feel like I can get by anywhere. So that really pushed the edge for me, and it felt very brave at the time.
That's amazing. Well, I'm glad you did it because
me too. Thank you.
I think that's pretty courageous actually to go by yourself and live with a Spanish family in Madrid.
Yeah.
Why not? But I guess at 19, what do you have to lose, right?
Nothing. It was a great experience. Yep. And they were very kind. I often wonder where they are now, because there were 2 daughters and a mother, and the daughters were 24 and twins at the time. I mean, they're still twins, but they were 24 at the time. So now they're, 44 or whatever, or something. Yeah, probably. Yeah. They seemed so much older than me at the time, but I guess they were only about 5 years older than me. So yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Amanda. I've just enjoyed
Tracy.
talking to you. Yeah. So I like I said, I was the biggest fangirl forever. And then when I found out that I knew you through a mutual connection, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to meet her. She has to be on the podcast.
I'm so grateful that you reached out and that you invited me to come on the show. I think you're doing great work, and we need more shows like this that are championing the bravery of women.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and just, I know you appreciate stories just as much as I do. And I think that there's probably something that you said on the show today that we didn't even realize was a gem or a truth bomb, but somebody listening to it is really going to get something out of it. And it's going to be exactly what they need to hear when they're listening to it. And it's going to give them an aha moment to, to do something different, to choose differently.
Yep, I believe that. Thank you for
Thank
providing
you.
the platform for that.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Brave Girls with Tracy M. as much as I did creating it. Each show is produced with you, the listener, in mind, as you look for inspiration and motivation from other brave souls as you pursue your desires. I'd love to hear your feedback, so please leave me a review on iTunes. I read every one. And check out my website, tracym.com, for more free resources. You can also join my list and sign up for my newsletter right from the homepage. Until next time, stay strong, believe in your dreams, and go do something brave.
We appreciate you joining us for this episode of Brave Girls with Tracy M. and hope that you enjoyed the show. For more information about today's episode, as well as additional free resources to help you achieve greatness in your life, visit tracym.com and sign up for our mailing list. Until next time, dream big, believe in yourself, and let your brilliance shine as only you can do.